decision for the economy of Uganda. And I must make sure that every Ugandans get a fruit of independence. Since independent, actually Uganda is not yet independent, I will say that, even when the British handed over on the 9th of October 1962.
The year is 1971. The air in Uganda, a young nation in the heart of Africa, is thick with political tension. Its leader, Milton Obote, is seen by many as becoming increasingly authoritarian. Then, on a fateful January day, a powerful figure steps from the shadows. His name is Idi Amin, a former army sergeant, a man of enormous physical presence and a reputation for both charm and brute force. His military coup is initially met with a kind of weary relief. People are tired of the old ways. They believe this larger-than-life figure, a man who called himself Big Daddy, will usher in an era of stability. No one could have predicted that this change would instead plunge Uganda into one of the most terrifying and bizarre chapters in modern history. This is a story of how a nation's hope turned into its gravest nightmare. To understand Idi Amin, we must first look at the man before the title. He was born in the early 1920s in northwest Uganda into a society still under British colonial rule. With little formal education, he found his path in the British colonial army, the King's African Rifles. His immense size, he was over 6 feet tall and built like a boxer, and his athletic skill made him a natural fit. He was a Ugandan light heavyweight boxing champion for 9 years. He was known for his charisma and his ability to connect with a common soldier. As Uganda moved towards independence in 1962, Amin rose through the ranks. He became a close ally of the country's first prime minister, Milton Obote. Amin was a muscle for Obote's political ambitions, and the two worked together, often on the darker side of politics, including a controversial gold and ivory smuggling operation from the Congo. When Parliament threatened to investigate these dealings, Obote used Amin to solidify his power, even promoting him to army commander. But this alliance was a fragile one, built on mutual need rather than trust. Obote began to see Amin as a threat, and Amin, in turn, feared his own arrest. The stage was set for the coup that would change everything. On January 25, 1971, while Obote was out of the country, Amin seized power with breathtaking speed. The world watched, and many were intrigued. Amin presented himself as a simple soldier, a man of the people. He even released political prisoners and promised free and fair elections. But it was a mask, one that would soon fall away to reveal a chilling reality. Within months, Amin's true nature began to emerge. The promises of democracy were forgotten. He dissolved parliament and gave himself the title of president for life. He consolidated power by purging the army of soldiers from ethnic groups he didn't trust, particularly those loyal to the previous leader, Obote. The purges were brutal, carried out with a ruthless efficiency that set the tone for the years to come. As his grip on power tightened, Amin's behavior grew more erratic and his decrees more bizarre. He gave himself increasingly outlandish titles, like His Excellency, President for Life, Field Marshal Haji Dr. Idi Amin Dada, VC, DSO, MC, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the seas and conqueror of the British Empire and Africa in general and Uganda in particular. His public statements ranged from the comically absurd to the chillingly menacing. He declared an economic war, a policy that would have devastating and lasting consequences for Uganda. In 1972, he stunned the world with a single, impulsive decision. He gave Uganda's entire Asian population just 90 days to leave the country. Most of these people were of Indian and Pakistani descent, and they were the backbone of Uganda's economy. They ran the businesses, the banks, the shops, and were doctors, lawyers, and engineers. They were given no time to sell their property. They were only allowed to take one suitcase and about $100. Amin's actions were born from a mix of racial prejudice, economic envy, and a belief that he was divinely inspired. The expulsion of nearly 80,000 people was a humanitarian catastrophe. It also caused the immediate collapse of Uganda's economy. Amin gave the businesses and homes of the expelled Asians to his supporters, most of whom had no idea how to run them. Factories shut down, stores were left empty, and the country's economic lifeblood was severed. The expulsions were just the beginning. The State Research Bureau, Amin's dreaded secret police, became a tool of terror. Anyone who questioned him, or was even suspected of disloyalty, simply disappeared. The victims were not just political opponents. They were judges, religious leaders, journalists, and students. The human rights group Amnesty International estimated that between 100,000 and 500,000 Ugandans were killed under his rule. The world watched in a state of confused horror. Amin's theatrical, often jocular public persona made it hard for some to take his atrocities seriously, even as he was nicknamed the Butcher of Uganda. The West, particularly Britain and the United States, cut ties and imposed sanctions, but nothing seemed to deter him. The country became a graveyard, and Amin dared the world to intervene. For 8 years, he seemed untouchable. But Amin's downfall would not come from an international coalition or a popular uprising. It came from his own hubris. The constant purges and the economic ruin had weakened the very military that was his power base. Soldiers were unpaid and unhappy. In late 1978, a mutiny broke out in the army. To distract from the unrest and to assert his power, Amin made a decision that sealed his fate. He ordered a full-scale invasion of neighboring Tanzania. The pretext was a border dispute, but the true reason was a desperate attempt to shore up his crumbling authority and to punish his old rival, Julius Nyerere, the Tanzanian president. Amin's troops occupied a piece of Tanzanian territory, but they had gravely miscalculated. The seasoned and disciplined Tanzanian army, supported by a growing number of Ugandan exiles, launched a counterattack. The war was surprisingly one-sided. Amin's soldiers, demoralized and ill-equipped, were no match for the Tanzanian forces. As the Tanzanian army, joined by the Ugandan National Liberation Army, marched steadily toward the capital city of Kampala, Amin's regime unraveled. His international allies, like Libya, provided some help, but it was too little, too late. On April 11, 1979, the combined forces captured Kampala. Idi Amin, the man who had ruled by fear and spectacle, fled into exile. Amin lived the rest of his life in a comfortable exile in Saudi Arabia, dying in 2003 without ever facing justice. But his legacy in Uganda is a deep and painful scar. His 8-year rule left the country economically shattered, with its once thriving industries in ruins. The social fabric was torn apart by ethnic divisions and deep-seated trauma that lingers to this day. The story of Idi Amin serves as a powerful and chilling historical lesson. It shows how a charismatic figure can exploit a moment of political weakness to seize power. It reveals how an obsession with personal power can lead to unimaginable brutality. Most of all, it reminds us of the fragility of peace and profound and lasting impact that a single, ruthless individual can have on the destiny of an entire nation. The grave sites are gone, but the ghost of Idi Amin still haunts the history of Uganda, a stark reminder of the horrors that can unfold when a dictator dares a world to look away.